Our next speaker was born in 1964 in Hesse, Germany. She received her PhD from Ruhr University, Bochum in 1997 with a dissertation on the German intelligence service and the resistance against Hitler. From 2008 to 2006, she worked for the Fritz Bauer Institute, Frankfurt, Maine, and afterwards at the National Socialism Documentation Center in Munich until 2012. Since 2012, she's been a freelance historian working on numerous projects dealing mainly with German history of the 19th and 20th century. Among the projects, co-worker and curator for two special exhibitions of the German Military Museum in Dresden and the Documentation Center at the Obersalzberg, which was one of Hitler's and Martin Bormann's headquarters later of the German Intelligence Service. Curator, and the City Museum in Gross-Gerau and the fate of the B-17 crew hard to get. She was also involved as a volunteer in the New Remembrance Project of the City of Munich, dealing with the victims of the Nazi era, officially responsible for the killed Allied flyers. Since 2014, she's been involved in research on the fate of two crews of the 460th bomb group, which were downed on July 19, 1944, and working with the Gamut Film and Munich Film Academy on a film documentary project on the Flying Junior, which is the topic of today's presentation and discussion. And although the film has been viewed by family members, it really is being debuted publicly to this group here today. So please welcome from Munich, Germany, Susanne Meinl.
Thank you, Jonathan, for this kind introduction. It's a great honor for me to speak to you today. And if somebody would have said to me 5 years ago, you will speak in Dayton at a reunion of a bomb crew, I would say, oh, no, never, why should I? So life has its own logic and its own fate. And I think I'm going to tell you something about the research when it started in 2013 and the discussion. I would just like to introduce the topic, the plane, the families, the soldiers, and the story. The second part of the presentation, as Jonathan told you, is a debut. It's a kind of teaser. I thought we had a handout, didn't we? Jonathan, had we a handout? Remember the handout about the film? Okay. Hold on to it. The ones who are interested will get the handout later about the film. It's a young film crew, and I will talk about it maybe then later. So, ladies and gentlemen, I feel very honored to allowed to speak today as your German guest, and I would like to introduce in advance Frau Walter, the widow of the Emerald photographer, and Hope Rodeberger, okay, the niece of the pilot who will join me. So what I present is not the work of my person, it's a cooperation, and I want to emphasize that it's a cooperation of the families of the Flying Junior, and it's, I think it's one of these unique German-American corporations which are possible now, 74 years after all the events. On July 19, 1944, one day before the failed assassination of Adolf Hitler, the capital of the Nazi movement, Munich, and the surrounding area, was once again the target of a daily large-scale American precision attacks. It was the fifth deadly air raid within a week on Munich. On that day, the 8th Air Force flew across the English Channel to attack important armament factories in the Munich suburb of Pullach, which is a P you can see on the map, as part of the Operation Crossbow. More than 100 B-17 bombers hit the Linde Company and the electrochemical plants in Munich. These plants were very important as they produced propellants for the V-1 and the V-2 rockets and the German submarines. The 15th Air Force, operating out of the Italian area of Foggia, flew their attacks on that day against the Dornier and BMW factories in the area of Allach, Neuaubingen, Oberpfaffenhofen. You can see it. This is the Allach A on the left, upper left. As well as against some plants in Munich downtown. All these factories produce aircraft parts and engines. The strategy behind the attacks was the systematic immobilization of the German Air Force by destroying the fuel industry and the production of planes, and as a result, to obstruct the further training of replacement German fighter pilots. Or as the young American airmen were told in the early morning briefings, we attacked the enemy in the wamp, in the nest, and in the air at the same time. For this reason, the 15th Air Force was reinforced in the spring of 1944 by newly established bomber groups to meet the German armaments industry in the wamp, especially in Austria and southern Germany. Among them was the 460th Heavy Bombardment Group, which transferred their B-24 from the US to Apulia from January 1944 on. The 460th Bomber Group was stationed in a little town called Spinazzola, one of these typical Italian towns you always know from the other bases. Two or three crews were assigned to a B-24 Liberator, which showed the unit's logo, the Black Panther. The crews trained as a team since the summer of 1943 at various airfields in the United States. Among them was crew number 314, the so-called Rodeberger crew, named after the pilot Bill DeWitt Rodeberger. Number 314, like many other crews, was a cross-section of the US society, all American boys between 18 and 26 years old. They came from all regions, from the New York Bronx to Texas and California and the Great Lakes, and were descendants of various European immigrant families. Like all other young men, they had dreamed of flying since their childhood and admired the hero, Charles Lindbergh, for his famous ocean crossing. If serving for their country was demanded of them, they all wanted to be pilots, or at least members of some plane's crew. The pilot, Bill Rodeberger, was born in 1918, was the oldest of the crew, together with the replacement navigator on that day, Lord B. Kelly, and the co-pilot, Rocky Morris. All of them were in their mid-20s and married. The nose gunner, Henry W. Hendrickson, was of Scandinavian origin. He was a few years younger, he came from New York, like the Jewish bombardier Arthur Nathaniel Pichowski. Pichowski's family had left the Ukraine in the 19th century from fear of further anti-Jewish riots. The family of the Texan flight engineer Robert Zaratnik was originally from Moravia. Jared Walter came from a large family in Michigan. He would have left to become a pilot, but was considered suitable only for the career of an aerial photographer due to his colorblindness. John Olmo, the crew's armorer, and Walter Red Gunner came from an Italian family. His father had left the city of Asti in Piedmont around 1914 because he did not want to be killed as a soldier in the trenches of the World War I. Richard Travis, the radio operator, was from Illinois, hoping for a future career in the Air Force after the war. The son of a tobacco farmer from Virginia, Robert O. Reese, dreamed of a career outside of the tobacco fields as well. The youngest of the crew was a 19-year-old man from Kentucky, James Malcolm Green. The aircraft mechanic was actually intended for the ground crew, but his boss helped him to become a gunner, since he dreamed of flying. In the days of July 1944, he dreamed less of flying and more about his just-born son. Green, like his comrades, had only 2 or 3 missions to complete, and in their minds, they were all already at home, together with their spouses, families, and children. Munich as a target was a nightmare for the crews. On July 19th, the BMW aircraft parts production facility in Munich-Allach was the target for today, for the 406th bomb crew. Thousands of forced laborers and prisoners of the concentration camp Dachau worked there in several halls on the air-cooled 14-cylinder double-air star injection engine type 801 and the associated command device for the German fighter Focke-Wulf FW-190. The factory was surrounded by heavy flak batteries and smoke pots to protect it. To this date, the 15th Air Force had not been very successful in the recent attacks on Allach. The crews considered Munich as a highly dangerous target, considering it was a long flight over the Alps, where they had to avoid attacks by German fighters, which lurked on the long distance from the Alps to Munich, watching for American bombers. There was also a strong anti-aircraft gunnery belt around Munich. In Munich, in the Munich South, batteries were situated, for instance, in Pullach and in the area of the Forstlieder Park, a huge forest between Munich, the Lake Starnberg, and the Isar River at Pullach. The last mission of the Junior was on Wednesday, July 19, 1944. 460th Bomb Group Commander Colonel Bertram C. Harrison himself led the Black Panthers into aerial combat. And the 2nd Attack Unit, led by Lieutenant Wilmot Keller and his crew, the Rodeberger crew was lead in the low box with their B-24 Flying Junior. The approach to Allach went without any incidents, despite some half-hearted attacks by German fighters, when flak hit the plain of Leer on the bomb run, shortly before reaching the target. Leer met an emergency release of the bombs, and his unit followed in the erroneous assumption that they were over the BMW factories. Then, the anti-aircraft gunnery battery at the Forstlieder Park managed to shoot down at least 2 of the aircraft on their return flight. The B-24 big-time operators, flown by First Lieutenant Joseph Semmerdeck and the Flying Junior. The first flak hit the nose of the Junior and demolished it. The second hit blew the number 3 engine apart. The pilot, the Rodeberger, managed to keep the aircraft in the air for a short time. Then an additional flak had ignited fire in the bomb bay, and the plane turned to the right and crashed into the Forstlieder Park. Only 4 or 5 crew members were able to bail out: Soratnik, Walter, Travers, Green, and possibly the tail gunner, Rees. The last 2 who left the burning Junior were the radio operator, Travers, and the waist gunner, James Malcolm Green, just after they pulled the ripcord of the parachute of the unconscious aerial photographer Walter and threw him out. They had to leave another member of the crew, the Barteret gunner John Almo, alive in the damaged plane, screaming, help me out," since the Barteret was blocked by the fire. The 2 pilots of the Junior, however, remained on board, as well and died like John Almo, by the impact of the crashing and the burning plane. It is unclear even today whether Bill Rodeberger had tried to crash land the ship at the edge of the forest. Fortunately injured, those happy ones who had been able to escape death on both ships floated to the ground between the Forstlieder Park, Munich, and the suburb Pullach. The young airmen were usually more or less in a state of shock, trying to recall what had been said during their training and briefing sessions about the proper behavior during capture, claiming rights as a prisoner of war, putting up no resistance, and giving only name, rank, and serial number. But their main question and worries were, what would they have to expect in the enemy's country after 5 heavy bombardments on the Nazi capital Munich? After years of continuous bombardment, would the German population still act according to the Geneva Conventions? Rumors of peasants with scythes, truncheons, and pitchforks had already made the rounds, But what the airmen did not know was that the local commands of the Gestapo, the SS, and the Nazi Party were just waiting for the moment when the so-called terror flies, such as the Nazi propaganda called them, came within the reach of their guns. The lynchings were actually only a phenomenon of the last 24 months of World War II. Until the summer of 1943, Allied airmen were dealt with largely in accordance with the provisions of the Geneva Conventions. With the intensified bombing of the German homeland, in addition to the British concept of morale bombing, the Geneva Conventions were sometimes non-existent in the case of the crews of Allied planes shut down in the German Reich and the occupied territories. Depending on the date and place of a crash, Gestapo, police, SS, Nazi officials, less-ranking members of the party, ordinary Germans, and even sometimes members of the Wehrmacht of the armed forces attempt to secretly override the Geneva Conventions so that the German POWs in Allied custody would not be harmed in retaliation. The Secretary for Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, in particular, and the powerful secretary of Adolf Hitler and head of the Nazi Party Chancellery, Martin Bormann, incited the average Germans, not only the party officials, to lynch the flies. While Joseph Goebbels issued via radio and in the newspapers the free ticket to murder, Bormann's instructions to kill were passed into the Nazi organizations in every German city, town, or village. It had happened several times, so his words were that crew members were lynched by the outraged population after the flies landing and arrest. Police and criminal prosecution of the murderers involved never took place, so go ahead for murder. In Poland, Bormann's lethal instructions fell onto a well-prepared ground. Since 1936, the town had a National Socialist model settlement for the Nazi Party Chancellery. Among the inhabitants, Martin Bormann himself, in whose estate the Munich Treaty of 1938 had been prepared. In 1942, a military headquarters was also built for welfare in the Mediterranean area there. Hitler and Bormann used the settlement and the headquarters for meetings and visits by high-ranking foreign state guests. The so-called Desert Fox, Erwin Rommel, prepared the battle plans for the future attacks in Italy against the Allied troops in summer 1943 from that headquarters in Pullack. For the Pullack Nazi leader, Heinrich Grabel, you can see him and the stormtrooper leader since just beyond the picture of Adolf Hitler. For both of them, the bigwigs in his town were a steady and constant source of excitement. Heinrich Grabel was known as a brutal fanatic who sought every opportunity to stand out in the Nazi sense. So on July 1944, chasing the descending American airmen was a special challenge for Grabel, the Pullacker stormtrooper leader Josef Zins, and the deputy local branch leader of the Nazi Party, Georg Willy Merz. Around lunchtime, they saw some parachutes over the area of Solm, a neighboring suburb which belongs now to Munich. The wind had driven some of the airmen towards Solm and Pullack. One of them was Gerald Alwater, the aerial photographer, and he was saved by an unknown benevolent Sovietarian. Flight engineer Robert Al-Saratnik was the first one to bail out, and he was the first one to capture by a German soldier in the city of Marid. Nearby, the completely shattered big-time operator's firm. When Gerald Walter landed is still unclear, somewhere in a field a few miles outside of Munich. Wounded by the splintered shards of a flak grenade, he had temporarily lost his eyesight. Walter could only remember that he was found by a farmer who even spoke a little English. He brought him quickly in his house and with the help of his wife provided first aid. The young couple's touching care remained burned into the memory of the aerial photographer, as did the plea of the water gunner John Ullman. to get him out of the waterette. But the young couple had to report water to the authorities, and they were afraid of arrest or coming into a concentration camp. So he had to leave the farmer's house, but he was picked by the German military and not by the SS and the Nazi killers. He survived. No mercy for James Malcolm Green, the young waste gunner with a newborn son. The radio operator, Richard Travers, and James Malcolm Green landed with their parachutes on the border between Munich and Pullack, about 300 meters apart. While Travers landed in a residential area in the Munich suburb of Solm, Green came down in a small wood near the headquarters of Adolf Hitler and Martin Bormann. When he came to the ground, he was approached by the Pullacker Nazi leaders, who had from their car followed the falling parachute. The armed party officials ran up the embankment to the forest and surrounded the uninjured Green. He put his hands up. There were eyewitnesses. And when he realized what the three Germans were up to, he implored them to spare him, as he had a wife and a newborn child. His plea were in vain. Grado, Merz, and Zins fired numerous shots at the defenseless Green, but the Nazi leader Grado apparently was such a bad shot that that one of the sons of the two other parties afterwards boasted that his father had to give the pilot the final shot, for the Germans, all Allied flyers were pilots. The corpse of Green was looted, stripped down to the undershirt, and remained lying naked on the scene in the summer heat, one day before the assassination on Hitler should have taken part. Only later he was buried in the nearby cemetery of Pullack. In the town itself, the act was discussed controversially, and again, unknown people laid flowers on the grave of the young American in the next 2 weeks and months, until Pullack Nazi leader Grado let the decorated grave destroyed. Richard Travers had more luck. He met one of the few good Germans, a courageous German soldier. Travers did not face or hear the traumatic events surrounding his comrade, although he was not far away. He had spent the last minutes of the air raid in the shelter in the backyard of a house where he had landed. You will see it later. The house owner was even so kind as to help him with his wounds and offered him something to drink. Then several armed civilians wanted to take Travers to the police. They led the radio operator through a residential street where two men rushed out, angry, out of a twin house. Two brothers, an architect and a contractor, both fanatical National Socialists since the early 1930s, like a third Nazi who then joined them. Travers also begged for his life when the brothers beat him, finally pushed him down on the street, and he wanted to jump onto his throat and chest with heavy boots. This was the moment when the young soldier, Walter Krein, came around the corner. Krein studied medicine in Munich after his disease, which made a further service at the Eastern Front impossible. Krein also knew Hans Scholl of the Munich resistance group of the White Rose from the university. Among the National Socialist medical students, Krein had already been noticed because of his regime-critical statements. An arrest following a denunciation by fellow students had been prevented, but Krein was on the blacklist of the Munich Nazi students' leadership. On July 19, 1944, Krein was at the house of his parents in Solm, and in that case, medical attention after the air raid was needed. When he turned his bike into the Solmer Bertel Street, this was the residential area where everything happened, Travers already lay on the ground. Krein intervened when he saw the brothers beating him. They stopped their attack on Travers, but started to beat Krein instead and damaged his bike. Two police officers appeared and brought the wounded Travers to the police station in Solm, while Krein hobbled off quickly with a broken bike. Travers reached the police station despite sustained attacks on him, but thankfully was alive. Then he was shown the flight gear from the killed Green with a remark that he was very fortunate that he was still alive. Travers was brought to the interrogation center in Oberursel together with the other survivors of the Flying Junior and the big-time operators and the other ships, there were 6, which had been shut down on July 19, 1944 in and around Munich. Interrogation that meant partial solitary confinement for days, sometimes weeks, prohibition of smoking, hunger, and questioning with all permissible and impermissible tricks. After that, the airmen were distributed to various permanent prisoner of war camps throughout the German Reich. For the survivors of the Junior, this meant internment in the Luftwaffe prisoner of war camp for non-commissioned officers, Stalag Luft 4 in Groß-Tychow, near Belgrade in Pomerania. As so-called terror flies and air gangsters, their treatment was bad and often characterized by attacks and harassment. As the Red Army approached the eastern borders, the prisoners of war were marched out of their camp on the road for months, walking through ice, rain, and snow into the heart of Germany. At the beginning of May 1945, Travers, Seradnik, and Walter were liberated in various places between the city of Halle and the Elbe River by Allied troops. The half-starved prisoners of war were then taken to Camp Lucky Strike near Le Havre, France, to be processed home. As soon as their health allowed, they went home by ship. The curse of war, the destinies after 1945, show that all these months did not went without a shadow. Travers returned home in fall of 1945. The experiences of this day, the July 19th, and the brutal months of the Black March from the enlisted men's camp had left deep scars in the soul of the former happy-go-lucky young man. He started to drink and got on the wrong track. Post-traumatic stress disorder. He then deserted from the Air Force and maybe committed a crime. His marriage failed. His only child died shortly after her birth. The FBI was searching, hunting him for 20 years. Travers died under a false name in the 1980s. Gerald Walter, after decades of silence until his death in December 2015, was in his last years active in US veteran organizations dealing with the impact of post-traumatic stress disorder on former POWs. The murderers of James Michael Green were only partly held accountable for their act. The Polak Nazi leader Karl Gradl was killed on May 1st, 1945, when US troops marched into the town. Former slave laborers led the Americans to Gradl's house. They beat him for hours before they killed him. Gradl's wife committed suicide on the same day. Merz and Sims accused the dead Gradl of the murder, pretending that they both came too late to intervene, so both murderers got off with only a short internment in our camp. The sole perpetrators who tried to lynch Travers were arrested in the summer of 1945. One of the brothers committed suicide as well. The other met again the young student Svante Grein in 1946 at the Dachau war crimes trial. Grein had to identify him. For his brave act in July 1944, Grein received 1 or 2 care packages at that time, and the offer of the US Counterintelligence Corps to work for them. But he refused and later preferred to leave Germany to work as a medical doctor in Africa. The exact fate of the 5th crew member, the tail gunner, Robert R. Rees, is still unclear. In summer 2016, Brad Rees and the niece of the pilot, Hope Rodeberger Dubois, began an emotional journey tracing the fates of the crewmen. In the spring of 2018, Phil Walter joined Hope to trace the history of the family members of the Junior, as the trailer of the film documentary shows that you will see now. I would like to emphasize that what you will see, there is nothing fake. Everything happened This was the camera was just watching and accompanying all the family members. And I'm very grateful that they came to Germany and did this emotional journey with me and us. Thank you. Yeah, so this is the emotional journey into a German and American past, and as you can see, it's an emotional journey into the present as well. So if there are comments, questions, please ask them.
I have a comment I'd like to make. A few years after the war, Ruth and I went to Germany. We met a couple in Germany. He had been in the German Navy, he said. He was a nice fellow, his wife was nice. They came to the United States, stayed overnight with us, and they went down to Ruth's class in Newton this evening. He talked to the students. One of the students asked him, how come you let everything take over? He said, very simple. We were in bad scrape, massive inflation, dream unemployment. And when he came along, he promised himself right to the picture, and he did. He said, when you're in that condition, you will fall.
This is always the question, how did Hitler come to power, and were all Germans Nazis, or did all Nazis, or were all Nazis criminals? I could tell stories about a Nazi leader in a town who prevented killing an American airman. So my message on this film is everybody has a choice in life, and he has to live with the choice he had. Sorry. Did you understand the first? Okay, so everybody has to live with the choice once has done, the consequences, but we all have a choice.
I'm still in disbelief of the whole thing, because Jerry and I were only married 15 years. And fortunately, though, I felt blessed that he went when he did, because he was a workaholic all his life. But he fell sick the 1st of October. I was going to my great-grandson's first birthday party. He said, I can't go, I don't feel it. I said, okay. But from then on, it was downhill. He was out of hospital more than he was at home. And he went very quietly. And I just thank God I had the time to spend with him and take care of him in his last days.
It's not about me.
That's so true.
I'm just an incidental person, but I'm grateful to Susan for bringing us all together and bringing a lot more context to what happened that day, and because I really didn't know that much, so I'm just grateful to Susan for bringing us all together and allowing us to know more.
I think we should mention Marcus as well.
And Marcus,
so
yes.
you could see he was the one, he's originally a banker, but he found 2 missed American airmen 6 or 7 years ago near Munich, and was able to find the families, and he called them, and the first time he said, are you kidding or you want money? And the second time he said, oh, my father died for your liberty. This is a sentence which I have always in mind when I work on these. I'm a German, I'm a proud German, I love my country. But one always reflects on the situation in May 1945 Was it a capitulation, or did Germany lose, or did Germany win? And from my point of view today, is Germany won a lot, freedom and democracy, and this is something I'm very grateful for.
Two reunions ago, we had a presentation by George Hoffman.
Yes.
This is the first time I've seen it personalized. So are there other efforts along the line what you've done and what George are doing on analyzing what happened to these various crewmen?
Yes, I'm working on quite a few of these stories. I had 6 of these stories for the German Military Museum in Dresden. This was the first time that the official museum of the German forces put this topic in an official exhibition. So, when they renew their steady exhibition in the dependency in Berlin-Gatow, where the Air Force part of German military history is, they will consider this topic and will put it on display. They promised it to me. This is one thing. The other thing, I incited 2 memorial plates. I was not successful getting a memorial plate for this young Gunner Green. It was denied by the town council, which made me very, very sick. But I was successful to get 2 memory plates last year and this year. And so if somebody goes to Frankfurt in the next month, take the opportunity to stop at Groß-Gerau, which is a small town 50 minutes apart from the airport. 2 American airmen were butchered in August 1944. And we have a special exhibition on this case. And the town, the mayor, accepted the memorial plate. And we have a small but wonderful exhibition. And of the crew, of the 9 members of the crew, 7 families came to honor both of the killed airmen 2.5 weeks ago. It was a heartbreaking event, and both of the families, the 87-year-old sister of the one and the niece of the other one, they closed the circle and they found, both of them, the families found a little peace, and that's the aim of it. So, thank you. If there are questions, please.
Earlier, when you were introducing your work, you said something about the day
Speak up, girl.
before the assassination of Hitler. And I was thinking, we were always taught that he killed himself. So I just want to know what your perspective is.
It was a tried assassination on July 20th.
Oh, okay.
So,
It failed.
unfortunately, it failed. It would have saved millions of lives of Germans and Americans and British and all in the world. But unfortunately, it failed. So,
Wondering about that.
no, I think I had it in the first sentence with a tried assassination and failed in the second place.
There was a memorial dedication to a Tuskegee Airman. I think it was earlier in the summer that was lynched. I believe I think it might have been in Linz. Do you know anything about that?
This is the area where Dr. Georg Hoffmann, who's together with his colleague Nelly Gall, they were your guests 2 or 3 years ago. This is an area where both are very active. There's a big difference between the attitude of the Austrian state and the German state. The Austrian state had 2 big, huge, financed official projects. One was the documentation of the lynchings, and the second, the fates of all the Allied fighters who had been shot down or were killed over Austria. I hope that my country will come to such a project as well. So I hope it. If there are no questions anymore, I'd like to say thank you again for presenting. Let me allow to present it's not unique, but this wonderful German-American corporation. Thank you very much.